We're on the record.
Today is May 9th, and we're in the matter of Zachary Coughlin, case number 06M13755. We're resuming with what?
Your Honor, well, what I would request is that we can take some witnesses out of order because I have witnesses lined up since 9:30 this morning when we were supposed to start trial, and a few of them are flying in from Las Vegas.
Okay, why don't we take those witnesses first? So we're going to take things a little out of order.
And also, Your Honor, I understand that we're stopping today at 4 p.m.
Yes.
Is it possible to either shorten the lunch or maybe work through lunch today since we have such a short amount of time and I have many witnesses?
We can work to 1:30.
Okay.
Okay. And then
maybe if you just go with the stuff you have that's important and has some substance to it, not every little thing that you found.
Okay, so anyway, we'll go to 1:30 and then we'll take an hour break.
You want an hour? I could do it in a half.
Okay, a half an hour.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor.
Okay.
And also, one more point of business. I misspoke yesterday about Dr. Tucker. I thought he would be able to testify tomorrow. However, he's advised that he is going to be in the state of Washington tomorrow, but would be available to testify by phone if that's possible. Or if that's not possible, Your Honor, if we could have maybe an hour scheduled at another time for him to testify about his report.
I can do it by phone. It will depend on whether Mr. Coughlin will agree to it.
Do I have to decide that right now, Your Honor?
No, you don't have to decide it right now. You can decide by the end of the day if you would agree to it.
For instance, I couldn't have done my deposition by phone, right?
I don't know. I mean, it depends on whether parties stipulate.
Well, Ms. Kagan wouldn't stipulate, so I drove down here instead of having to make her drive to Reno to do the deposition. So.
Okay. Well, this is it's a little different.
Okay.
Because the issue is how much cross-examination do you want to do? You've had an interview with him for 3 hours, so have you looked at his report? Okay. Do you have questions you want to ask?
Yes.
Okay, and the question is do you want to do it over the phone or do you want to see him here? But you can think about that.
Because I'm kind of leaning towards not to go against anybody's recommendation, or certainly if you think it's better to do it the other way,
I'm leaving it totally up to you, and it also depends on when you can come back again.
Okay.
So it's up to you.
You'd like to do it today, though, Susan?
I'm sorry?
We were talking about this.
Dr. Tucker?
This point you just brought up.
He said that he's available to testify by phone tomorrow morning, I believe. So it would be tomorrow morning.
But we're talking to see what we were talking about when you brought that point up is we were talking about whether or not we would have him come back here in person rather than just do it the way you want to do it. No, we've kind of been doing everything your way.
I see.
But
you know, Your Honor, if Mr. Coughlin does not agree to accept testimony by phone, that's fine. I would request that we have an extra hour set aside to resume this trial at a later date.
Right. And what Mr. Coughlin has to understand is he'd have to come back for that.
Right.
And I'll leave it up to him. Okay? But you need to let us know by late this afternoon.
Okay.
Okay. So.
Thank you, Your Honor. The state bar calls Officer Jeff George to the stand.
Sure.
morning.
Yeah, it's a confidential proceeding. Oh, but it's from the office.
Okay.
He's from the
I
same
know that,
office.
but not everybody knows that.
Okay. Okay, well, this is a confidential proceeding, and the person sitting back there is someone from the State Bar, so I just want you to know that. Okay?
That person.
Yes.
And can we discuss why they're back there?
Because he's from the State Bar, and I presume that he's watching the proceedings.
But he's not affiliated with the State Bar Court?
No, he's not affiliated with the State Bar Court. He's from the State Bar's office.
Okay.
The Office of Trial Counsel.
Okay.
Okay, so what I'm saying is that he can sit in the hearing.
Even though it's confidential?
Yes, because he's from that.
Is he working on this case, or?
No, he's not working on this case.
Can I ask why he's here, then?
It doesn't matter why he's here. He works in the State Bar. Okay?
Okay. So anybody who works at the State Bar could
Anyone
come?
who works in the Chief Trial Counsel's office can sit in.
Okay.
Other witnesses can't,
All right.
or other people from the public. It's not open to the public. Okay. Okay.
Would you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly state under penalty of perjury that the evidence that you shall give in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please be seated and state and spell your first and last name for the record.
Yes, I'm Officer Jeff George, Jeff George.
Thank you.
Good morning, Officer George.
Morning.
Can you please state your current employment?
I am currently employed by the state of California, specifically the California Highway Patrol, and I'm assigned to the North Sacramento area office.
How long have you been in that position?
I've been employed by the Highway Patrol for 16 and a half years, and I've been assigned to the North Sacramento station for 11 years.
And as part of your job, do you have to do you make arrests?
I do.
And have you ever made any arrests for DUIs?
I have.
How many arrests for DUIs have you made, Officer George?
I've personally made about 3,000 DUI arrests over my career and assisted in maybe 4,000 additional.
And before you made those arrests, did you have any training in DUI arrests?
I do.
And what kind of training did you have?
I was originally received my training, which was 52 hours in DUI training while in the CHP Academy in 1990.
Do you have any additional training to that?
I do.
And what is that?
I was certified as a drug recognition evaluator in 1998. That course consisted of 80 hours of classroom and 40 hours of field certifications where I did hands-on, basically put my classroom skills to use, did hands-on evaluations of persons that were under the influence of various types of drugs.
And what exactly were you taught?
Basically, there's a 13-step process to go through, evaluation process. We were taught the 13, each of the 13 steps. We were taught what drugs have what symptoms, what symptomology to look for, and how to administer a given set of tests that check for those various symptoms.
Do you recall arresting Mr. Coughlin, who is the applicant in this matter?
I do.
And how do you recall that?
Well, originally, when I got subpoenaed by this court, I reviewed the arrest report, and I remember distinctly making this arrest. And also, when I saw him today, I remembered him also.
Can you turn to Exhibit 69, please? It's in the witness binder that's in front of you.
Okay.
Now, do you recognize Exhibit 69?
Yes, the first page of the exhibit, marked number 69, is the arrest report, commonly referred to as the booking sheet for the Sacramento County Jail. The next page would be the probable cause declaration, which is also a Sacramento County Main Jail form.
Your Honor, can I make an objection?
Sure. But it has to be a legal objection.
Okay.
Okay.
My objection would be relevancy, and specifically pointing to, in the application for admission to the State Bar, it deals with convictions. And we're talking about an arrest right here. And as I understand this application, arrests don't even need to be reported, right? If you had a conviction, you report the conviction, and that's it. And so I don't understand the relevancy, and I don't understand the basis.
I'm going to overrule the objection because it goes to, once it's reported, it goes to the issue of whether you were candid.
Okay, so reporting something that didn't even need to be reported, does that show candor?
Reporting something that might show candor depends on what you say about what you reported, which is, I'm assuming at this point it might be the State Bar is presenting evidence that what you reported wasn't candid.
Okay, so would one be better off not reporting this arrest at all?
That's not an objection, so I'm going to overrule the
Okay.
objection, okay?
Okay, I'm sorry, Officer George. Can you continue with page 3 of Exhibit 69?
Page 3 would be referred to as a CHP 202, which is driving under the influence arrest investigation report. This is a 4-page document that was prepared by me on January 23rd of 2003.
And was the arrest on January 23rd, 2003?
It was.
And did you prepare Exhibit 69, pages 1 through 9?
Yes. There are actually 2 separate reports. Pages 1 through 4 would be the driving under the influence arrest report. Then there's a supplemental report, which is a 202 DRE. That's a CHP form. It's a drug recognition evaluation. It's a supplemental to the arrest report, and that report is also 4 pages.
And you wrote both of these reports?
I did.
Okay. Did you have a chance to review these? Well, first of all, Your Honor, no.
My understanding, just be so I can clear up matters, that this is arrest that led to the conviction of the reckless.
Correct, Your
So
Honor.
it is a conviction, so that's another reason why your objection would be overruled.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand, Your Honor.
This is an arrest that led to a conviction for a dry reckless, right?
Right.
Convictions are your duty. You have to report convictions.
Right, but does that mean you have to report the charge? If the charges that you were arrested for, if those didn't lead to
It doesn't
convictions, you
matter.
were
It's a
convicted on
conviction
another
at
charge.
this point. It's a conviction. So let's just proceed.
Your Honor, I request to have Exhibit 69, pages 1 through 9, moved into evidence.
Is there any objection?
Yes, I would object on preserving an objection on that, on the grounds that I don't believe this is something that can be admitted given the
What's the
application.
objection? The legal objection.
Foundation, relevancy, hearsay, not properly authenticated.
Okay, it's overruled. It's admitted.
Okay, Officer, did you have a chance to review this report before testifying today?
I have.
And is it your opinion that the statements made in your report are accurate or an accurate representation of what happened during the arrest of Mr. Coughlin?
They are.
Can you describe how the arrest took place?
Yeah, this arrest basically stemmed from a traffic stop for a minor infraction, which was non-use of a safety restraint or seatbelt. Mr. Coughlin was a solo occupant in a vehicle. He was observed while stopped at a traffic light at the intersection of Howe Avenue and Cottage Way without his seatbelt on. I made a traffic stop and contacted him. He was identified by a Nevada driver's license. I explained to him why he was stopped, and during the conversation with Mr. Coughlin, I noticed objective symptoms of intoxication and possible drug influence.
And what were those symptoms?
Well, I noticed that his eyes were red and watery. I could smell a strong odor of freshly burnt marijuana inside his vehicle. When I had him step out of his vehicle, he was unsteady on his feet. I could smell the odor of the freshly burnt marijuana about his person, his hair, his clothing. When I got close to him, his breath smelled of marijuana. His pupils were dilated for the lighting conditions and slow to react to light stimulus. And the totality of all of that, based on my training and experience, I felt that I needed to proceed further and investigate.
And what happened once you decided that?
He was eventually given some field sobriety tests, which he was unable to perform, as demonstrated or explained, and he was arrested for driving under the influence.
What did you believe Mr. Coughlin to be under the influence at the time that you made the arrest?
My initial suspicion was cannabis or marijuana. He was transported after being arrested down to the Sacramento County Jail, where a drug recognition evaluation was conducted in a controlled environment. At the completion of that, I confirmed my suspicion that he was under the influence of marijuana.
When you said you performed field sobriety tests, or you asked Mr. Coughlin to perform those tests?
I did.
What test did you ask him to perform?
A Romberg test.
And can you explain what that is?
Basically, Mr. Coughlin was asked to stand with his feet together, heels and toes touching, his arms down at his sides, to tip his head back, and to estimate 30 seconds.
And was he able to do that?
Well, initially he did tip his head back. He did keep his arms down at his sides. He swayed with a variance of about 3 inches, and during the 30 seconds he slowly lowered his head instead of keeping his head back.
So would you say that he passed that test or failed that test?
Well, they're not really pass or fail. They're designed to check for divided attention impairment. I would say that he did not perform that test sufficiently.
And what other tests did you ask Mr. Coughlin to perform?
A standing on 1 foot test. That test consists of having Mr. Coughlin from the position that he was previously in, with his feet together, heels and toes touching, raise 1 foot approximately 6 inches from the ground, keeping his toe pointed forward, arms down at his sides. He was instructed to look at his foot and count aloud from 1,001 to 1,030.
And was he able to perform that?
Not sufficiently, no.
Okay. Were there any other tests that were that you asked him to perform?
Yes, he was given a finger count test.
Okay.
And that test consists of having one hand, holding one hand up, palm open, using the thumb as a pointer, touching it to the tips of the fingers, starting with the pinky and counting each finger aloud, with thumb to pinky being 1, the next finger being 2, 3, 4, and then open hand is 5. Then in a reverse order, open hand again is 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1.
And was he able to perform that test?
He did perform the test, but not sufficiently. He counted from 1 to 5 in both directions.
Okay. Were there any other tests that he was asked to
At that
perform?
point, no.
Okay. And you stated that there was another point where he was actually taken somewhere and given different testing?
Yes, he was taken down to the Sacramento County Main Jail, where he was given some additional tests as part of the procedure for the drug recognition evaluation.
And who gave him those tests?
I did.
And what tests were those?
Objection.
Objection.
Well, I don't see in the report where some of this is.
That's not an objection. What you need to do is cross-examine if you have problems with it.
Okay.
It's overruled.
So what tests were given at that later time?
Again, he was given a Romberg test. He was given a walking heel-to-toe test, a standing on 1 foot, and a finger-to-nose test.
And how did he perform those tests, in your opinion?
He did not perform them as demonstrated or explained again.
In your opinion, have you made arrests before for driving under the influence of marijuana?
I have.
And is there anything specific that you look for with respect to driving under the influence of marijuana?
Well, marijuana influence are certain physical indicators. One would be the dilated pupils, slow to respond to light stimulus. An increased marijuana influence can result in an increased heart rate, an increased blood pressure, body temperature could be increased. There's a test that we do as part of the eye evaluation. It's called a lack of convergence. When one smokes marijuana, you will tend to see that lack of convergence, meaning that their eyes won't cross. One eye will generally kick out, and that was present in this case. Part of the eye evaluation requires that he be taken into a dark room, let his eyes adjust to darkness, and under different stages of light would be introduced at different strengths. A person that's not under the influence, their eyes would react one way. His eyes reacted in a way that was consistent with my training and experience for marijuana influence.
What about
If I can...
go ahead.
If I can backtrack a little bit, another thing that we check would be we look in someone's mouth, have them pull their lower lip down to look for debris in their gums or teeth, have them stick out their tongue, look for indications of what I would consider recent marijuana use, and that would be indicated by the green that's in the marijuana comes out and stains the tongue when people smoke it. So we check the tongue, and in this case, his tongue was coated with a green pasty film.
Okay. Can you estimate, based on your experience, whether Mr. Coughlin had ingested marijuana within the past 24 hours?
Again, based on my training and what I've been trained to look for, marijuana impairment is generally up to 4 hours. Beyond that, you wouldn't necessarily see the indicators that he displayed to me. So if I had to put a time estimate on it, I would say for sure within 24 hours and more than likely within 4 hours at the time of the arrest.
In your experience, are you aware of any instances where somebody would maybe have smoked marijuana in the weeks preceding an arrest and still show signs that you were talking about that Mr. Coughlin exhibited?
No. Let's say a daily user for marijuana. Again, the signs of impairment are only going to last about 4 hours from the time he used. So if he had smoked a week, prior, he may come back positive for THC or marijuana in his chemical test, but he would show no signs of impairment.
And in your opinion, was Mr. Coughlin showing signs of impairment at the time that you arrested him on January 23rd, 2003?
Most definitely.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Hello, Officer George. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Fine, thanks. Officer George, I'd like to ask you a few initial questions. I assume you graduated from high school?
I did.
Okay. Can you tell me what your GPA was in high school?
Objection, relevancy, and beyond the scope of direct.
Your Honor, I think it goes to, no? Okay.
No.
All right. Did you go to college, Officer George?
I attended some college.
Did you graduate from college?
I did not.
Can you describe what and how much college and what sort of classes you took?
Objection, relevancy.
He's an expert, right? He's a drug recognition expert who got out of high school. So
I'm going to sustain the objection.
okay. So we can't go into this expert's.
You can go into his expertise. He's been a highway patrol officer for 16 years. He's made 3,000 DUI arrests in his career. Go into that. His training, 52 hours as I understand. He's certified as a drug recognition evaluator. Okay?
Okay.
You can go into
But we
those.
can't go into whether he took science courses or anything like that. Into some
What you need to do
some
is go into
community
his training
college
as
he
a
went to.
person who has made 3,000 arrests.
Yes, Your Honor. Okay. Officer George, you've made 3,000 arrests and assisted in some 4,000 others. Where would that fall? Where would that compare to your peers? Say someone who, you've been a highway patrol officer for 11 years, you said?
16.
16.
16? Okay. Where does that fall? Are you like Hall of Fame, or are you like...
Objection, relevancy.
Sustained.
Your Honor.
And also, your tone needs to be different.
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, what if one officer had made 20,000 arrests and one had made 500?
You're not to ask the court questions. You're supposed to proceed as an attorney.
I'm arguing my objection.
Okay. And what I'm saying is the objection should be a legal objection, not a speaking objection.
Okay, and her objection was relevancy, and I'm explaining why it should not be.
And I have sustained it, so you need to ask the next question.
So I don't get an opportunity to...
You need to ask the next question.
Okay.
Let's ask the next question.
Okay. So is that a high number of arrests for DUI? Where do you compare to your peers?
Objection, relevancy, asked, and this was already ruled on, Your Honor.
Your question is 3,000 arrests, right?
Where does that fit in?
I'm going to sustain the objection.
Well, he certainly went... Okay, Your Honor. Officer George, you certainly went into a lot of detail and got to speak on pretty much whatever it is Ms. Kagan asked you about. So we got a good idea of, your background as it relates to the things Ms. Kagan wants us to know.
What's the question?
Well, let's go to the arrests. Do you recall pulling me over for having my seatbelt off?
I do.
And can you describe that? Were you driving your vehicle?
I might have to refer to the report, but I believe so.
Okay. And was there someone with you?
Yes.
And who was that?
Officer Amy Escatel.
Okay. But she didn't contribute to this report? What was her role that day?
Cover.
Okay, so she was covering.
Correct.
And so for instance, would her opinions, if they differed from yours, would they be included in this report?
No, she's not the arresting nor the evaluating officer.
Okay, so she doesn't get to have an opinion?
Objection, argumentative, and...
I'm going to sustain it on relevancy grounds.
Okay. Can you tell me, during this arrest, you pulled me over for having my seatbelt off, right? You noticed as you were driving past me at a stoplight, you noticed I had my seatbelt off. And you might have been driving, and while that time, if you were driving, you noticed somebody who was at a stoplight had their seatbelt off. So you turn around and pull me over. Do you recall asking me to take a blood alcohol test?
At which point?
That would be after you pulled me over, while we're still on this side of the road.
Again, you're going to have to narrow it down. At which point?
Any point.
Yes. After you were arrested, I explained to you the implied consent law in the state of California,
Prior to
which
being
requires
arrested.
you to submit to either a blood, breath, or urine test.
Prior to being arrested.
Prior to being arrested,
Shortly after being pulled over.
did I ask you to take?
A blow test.
No.
You didn't.
No.
You don't recall a conversation that took place between us regarding that. Wherein shortly after pulling me over, you asked me to get out of the car and take a blood alcohol blow test. And this was after I told you how much I had to drink that night.
Is this a question? Is this...
Why
I
don't you
haven't even finished my
ask the question?
Okay. Well, my question is why don't you remember this when I have a memory of having a long conversation about this with you?
Objection.
Okay. Why don't you ask a proper question?
So you never... Why didn't you? You're saying you pulled someone over on suspicion of DUI, and yet you didn't ask them to take a blow test?
Well, that's actually incorrect. What I pulled you over for was non-use of seatbelt.
Okay.
Which...
That was the pretext you pulled me over to... Go ahead.
Objection. Object to the word pretext.
Okay, I'm going to sustain the objection.
Okay.
Let's ask a legal question.
Okay. And he was answering.
No, what's your question?
Well, my question that he was answering was why didn't you do a field sobriety, a blow test in the field? And you were going into why you pulled me over. and what you use that for.
Were you going to let me answer the original question?
Yeah, sure.
Or,
Go ahead,
or was there going to be a
Officer
narrative after that? Okay, so the question was, why didn't I have you take a blow test at the scene?
Yeah.
Because at no time did I suspect that you were under the influence of alcohol, and that's what that test would check for.
Okay. Do you recall saying to me, after I asked you why you wanted me to take a blow test, saying, you can do it or you cannot do it, but if you refuse to take this blow test, I'll just arrest you, and then you'll have to go to the station and take a urine or a blood.
No.
Do you recall yourself and myself having a discussion about the legal merits of asking someone to take a blow test when you have no reasoning to believe they've had a drink that night?
No,
I don't recall that either. It's a long conversation.
Let him answer the question first.
Actually, my recollection of the conversation with you was that you felt that because you were a law student that I could not prove that you were under the influence of anything and that you had not been drinking other than one glass of wine approximately 4 hours prior to being stopped.
Were we discussing that in the context of you wanting to take a blow test?
No. That was...
Why were we discussing that then?
You're going to have to let him finish his
Okay.
answers, okay?
my recollection is
I
that...
just wanted a yes or no, Your Honor.
I understand that, but as yesterday when you were asked questions and you wanted to explain, I always allowed you to explain a yes or no answer. He is allowed to explain a yes or no answer.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, now I'm confused. What was the question?
Why don't you ask the question again?
I asked whether or not you asked for a blood test, and then I asked you if you remembered the legal kind of discussion we had about why. I was asking you, do you have a right to make me take a blood test if I haven't demonstrated any signs of intoxication and you don't smell alcohol and all you have is you pulled me over for a seatbelt and then you got mad
Okay,
that
why
I would
don't you ask
challenge your
him the
authority?
question, not ask, what's your question?
I'm asking him to explain why he was just saying what he was saying about I didn't have you take one in the field because you and I were having a conversation about the merits of doing so in the field, and then I explained to you. So,
Okay, ask the question.
all
Ask
right,
a question.
did you have me take a blow test in the field?
No.
Did we discuss taking a blow test in the field, and did you get upset once I...
Objection compound.
Okay,
Did you discuss
it's
taking a blood
sustained.
test in the field with me?
No.
Okay. Can you explain what you were just describing in relation to that? Or can we have it read back? Because he went in to describe it.
We don't have a read back. You have to remember the question you asked.
Okay.
I believe what I stated...
Something about being a law student. I remember that. Okay, so obviously we're talking, right? We're talking about law stuff. And you're saying, you're a law student. You think you can tell me what, you know?
No, that's not
Okay.
my recollection of the
Right.
conversation.
Well,
Okay, so
I
what's
remember
the
you
next
were belligerent
question?
towards lawyers when we were talking.
Objection, argumentative, and there's no question pending.
Sustained. Let's ask a question, okay?
Can you tell me why you knew I was in law school?
Because you made it very clear that you wanted me to know that. You stated to me that you were in law school.
Do you remember having a discussion about where you were saying, wow, 3 years of law school down the drain, huh?
No.
You don't remember that? Do you remember us having a discussion about law school?
The discussion that we had about law school in my recollection was that you told me that you were in law school and that there was no way you were going to get a DUI when you hadn't been drinking, and I didn't give you a breath test in the field.
Wait. Now
What's
we're
the
talking
next
about breath
question?
tests?
What's
Now
the
we're
next-
talking about breath tests.
And again,
Mr.
as I
Coughlin.
stated earlier,
Okay.
this all took place after you had been taken into custody.
In the car or
Yes.
at the
Mr.
station?
Coughlin, what you need to do is ask questions, okay?
Okay. So we didn't, in the field, we didn't talk about a breath test in the field? That never came up?
Okay, again, I didn't offer you a breath test in the field because at no time did I suspect that you were under the influence of alcohol, and that's what that test checks for.
And I didn't refuse to take a breath test in the field?
You weren't offered one. There wasn't anything for you to refuse.
Right, okay. And would that be noted in your report?
If you were given a breath test, yes.
And if I wasn't given a breath test, wouldn't that be standard for a DUI to test for a breath test?
No.
It wouldn't be.
Are you asking me the same question?
Yeah,
the
can you
answer's still
explain
the
that?
same, no.
You're arresting someone for DUI, but you don't give them a blow test, whatever you call it, breath test.
Okay, I'm not sure that you have a comprehension of how this works.
I don't see how anyone could, but go ahead.
That field breath test that you're referring to is called a preliminary alcohol screening device. It's a field sobriety test to further assist me in determining whether or not you're under the influence of alcohol. Again, at no time during my contact with you did I suspect that you were under the influence of alcohol. That is why you were not offered that test in the field.
Did you ask me how much I had to drink that night?
I did.
Why?
Because it's a standard question.
Like taking a breath test would be standard?
Again, that is not a breath test. It's a preliminary alcohol screening device.
Whatever.
It's a field
Let's
sobriety
just say
test.
breath test, okay.
Well, that would be an incorrect statement.
Okay.
It's not a breath test.
But you're blowing your breath into it?
It is a field
Testing
sobriety
something?
test to determine,
What would you like
assist
me
me
to
in
call
determining.
it?
It's called a preliminary alcohol screening device.
So you take a test from a preliminary alcohol screening device.
That is a field sobriety test to further assist me in determining whether or not you're under the influence of alcohol.
Does it give you a reading?
It does give a reading.
Like a .08 or below or under, that kind of thing?
Well, we're talking again hypothetically because none of this applies in your case. You were not offered that test because at no time did I suspect you were under the influence of alcohol.
But at some point I took that test, right?
You did. As part of the procedure for the drug evaluation, the part of that procedure is to rule out alcohol as an intoxicant.
But you wouldn't do that at the scene.
Correct.
But you did it later.
Correct. Because it's it's part of the process for the drug evaluation. I knew that you were going to come back zero. You were not suspected of being under the influence of alcohol. That's part of the procedure at that time to take that test.
Did we discuss that in the field?
No.
We didn't discuss that you knew I was going to come back zero for alcohol.
No.
Objection, asked and answered.
At this point, no more questions in that area. I think it's clear he did not arrest you.
Your Honor, if I may, just explain why I'm going. I'm going into this because it's my belief that Officer George got upset with me for taking issue with his wanting to do a breath test for me when I knew that I...
You've explored that issue, okay? Let's go on to the next question.
You say on the Romberg test that I went 5, 4, 3, something like that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
That would be the finger count test,
Finger
not the
count
Romberg test.
Okay. You're the expert, right?
Objection, argumentative.
Sustained.
Okay. On the finger count test, can you describe again how I failed that test?
Yes, you counted 1 through 5, and then 1 through 5 again when you were supposed to count 5 through 1.
And did you note that in your report?
I did?
Because I don't see that. Can you explain that to me where that is?
Sure. Okay. Page 3 of the arrest, driving under the influence arrest report, line 9, says finger count. The subject counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on all 3 repetitions.
I'm sorry. I'm having trouble finding it. This is on Exhibit 69?
Correct.
Okay. Page 3?
Page 3 of the CHP 202, driving under the influence arrest
Can you go by the
investigation
date
report.
stamps that are at the bottom? Okay, I see what you're saying.
What's your next question?
Is that noted elsewhere in your report?
I'm sorry?
Is there... I see this on the psychophysical test, there's a finger to nose.
You're looking in a different area of the report.
Right.
That's under the drug evaluation.
Okay, because as I'm reading your report, it kind of sounds like I'm wondering how I'd be able to stand up, because it sounds like I failed every single thing you asked me to do.
Just ask a question, okay?
Well, that's what I'm asking you. How could someone who's, as you described me in here, possibly even stand up?
I'm not sure that.
Able to function somewhat, but failed every test you gave him, type thing?
Well, again, the tests are checked for divided attention impairment. They're not pass or fail. Divided attention impairment is the ability to do more than one thing, one simple task.
But you were giving me a pass or fail, weren't you? You weren't saying it in shades of gray. You were saying he didn't perform it satisfactorily. He didn't perform it as he was supposed to. That was your testimony again and again. It wasn't a pass or fail. It's not a shade of gray, according to you.
No, actually, my testimony was that you didn't perform them sufficiently, that you did not perform them as demonstrated or explained.
Like pass or fail?
Well, again, they're not pass or fail tests.
I'm going to sustain the objection. I think he's always described it as it was a question of, as I saw it, gray. You didn't perform sufficiently.
So it's, once you don't do it gray, then it becomes pass or fail.
Objection.
His characterization is not pass or fail. His characterization is not performing sufficiently.
And if you don't perform sufficiently, that's noted.
And it was noted. Okay, so let's go to the next
To what degree, though, is it
question.
noted? If you fell flat on your face, is that
Mr.
distinguished
Coughlin.
from swaying 2 inches? That's pretty, right?
It would
Okay,
be.
so what's the next question?
Unless this report is just beyond reproach and everything in it is considered sacrosanct, Your Honor, I don't want to question that if that's the case. But if
I'm
it's the
just
case that
asking you
we're
to
able to
ask a
look into what
question.
he's doing here
Okay.
and see if he's just an officer
I'm
who's
asking you to ask
kind of a
about-
rogue prosecutor like in the Duke case,
Objection.
or
Okay,
what?
wait, let
you know?
me, I'm asking you to ask a question.
Oh, wait. Rogue, okay.
Okay. Ask a question.
Okay. So you asked me if I had anything to drink that night,
I did.
and you noted it in your report?
I did.
And how much did I had to drink that night?
I believe you told me 1 glass of wine around 6 p.m.
Okay. And have you ever smoked marijuana, Officer George?
Objection. Relevancy.
Sustain.
Wouldn't that go into whether or not he could tell
You're
if
the
someone's...
one that's on trial here, not the officer, okay?
If he's
So you
scared
need
to
to ask
answer
a
that, or
question.
if he was afraid of looking like a
I've made my
hypocrite.
ruling on the
Okay.
case, on the question, so
You
let's
haven't-
move on.
Yeah. No?
Let's move
Okay.
on.
Let's see.
The questions need to be relevant to this hearing.
At any time throughout the rest, particularly when first pulled over, would you say I was argumentative? How would you describe our interaction on a human level?
Similar to your behavior today, I would consider you somewhat argumentative, passive-aggressive maybe.
Can you describe that?
Again, similar to your behavior
in
today.
relation to that night, and give examples of what you mean and how you mean.
Not really, other than we're acting similar to how you're acting today.
Was it in a situation like where you asked me to take a blood test, and I said, why should I take a blood test?
Objection,
Is
asked,
it
answered.
like
I'm going to
that?
sustain the objection. It's
Can you
irrelevant
give me
also.
some situation?
Sure.
Okay.
Like, for example, when I asked you where were you coming from tonight, you said, where are you coming from?
I did? Is that noted in your report?
No.
But you remember that from how long ago?
I do.
And you can't remember whether you were driving or not that night?
Objection. That wasn't even a question posed, Your Honor.
I'm going to
You did say he couldn't remember whether he was driving or
sustain
not.
the objection. This is totally irrelevant.
That's an amazing memory. You can't remember if you're driving? but
Line
you
of
remember
questioning is totally irrelevant. Let's go on.
something. So we're not going to get into whether have you ever been around someone who's smoking marijuana?
Objection. Relevancy.
Sustain.
I don't know how in the hell a guy can get up there and say he's an expert at something if he doesn't even have to answer whether he's been
Mr.
around it.
Coughlin, you need to ask a legal question.
Have you ever been around someone? Have you ever been around
He has
freshly
made
burnt marijuana?
3,000 arrests,
How about,
okay?
Okay, has he ever been around freshly burnt marijuana?
Yes.
Can you describe that? When was that?
Part of the training.
At your DRE class,
Yes.
there was freshly burnt marijuana.
Yes.
And was it being burned? How was it being burned? Was somebody smoking it?
No.
How was it? How were they getting?
Okay, I'm
they were
going to
just putting a
object to this
flame
line.
it?
I'm not allowing this line of questioning anymore. It's totally irrelevant.
Sorry, Your Honor. So, is there any question I
Point
can
is,
ask
is
that relates to?
you have pled guilty to a dry reckless. So let's move on from there.
But that's not what Ms. Kagan's bringing this up for. Her whole thing is trying to, what? She's not trying to establish that I pled guilty to a dry reckless. We didn't need to spend all this time and taxpayer money collecting all this stuff if that was the point, because I admitted to that.
So
I reported that.
what's the next question?
Why are we even getting into this? And if there's a reason, then am I allowed to rebut it?
I'm not here to answer your questions. You need to ask questions.
My questions go into why we're getting into this. Why are we talking about this arrest in all this detail?
You have a question to ask this officer.
Yeah.
Okay, what is the question?
Have you ever smelled freshly burnt marijuana?
That's been
Asked
asked
and
and answered, and what's the next question?
How do you know you're smelling freshly burnt marijuana?
Because it has a different smell than non-burned marijuana.
Is that like a smoky smell?
Again, it's hard to describe. It's a clearly recognizable smell.
Like the standard for obscenity, kind of?
Okay,
Objection.
Is that a question?
Relevancy.
I'm not asking, I am not allowing any more questions in this area. You need to move on to another area.
Yes, Your Honor. Officer George, did we discuss any physical problems that I had?
I did ask you if you had any physical defects, yes.
And can you tell me what I answered?
That you had chronic back pain, and that you were taking prescription Loratab.
Okay. Now, generally, do you have people with chronic back and neck pain stand back and look at the sky and have them count to 30?
Relevancy.
Is that pretty normal for you?
I'm going to overrule the objection.
Well, first off, I believe my answer was that you said you had chronic back pain. So I don't think we've established that you've had neck pain also. And yes, that is a standard field sobriety test that's given.
Would you give that to someone who had one of those halos on their head, like one of
Objection.
those?
Relevancy.
Sustain. Next
Oh, okay.
question.
Would you give it to someone who had a neck brace
Objection.
on?
Relevancy.
Sustain.
Would you give it to someone?
I am not allowing any more questions in this area. I don't think it's relevant. What's the next question?
Do you have some sort of performance incentive for the number of DUIs you give? Is there a quota or do
Objection.
you give?
Relevancy.
I'm going to overrule it.
The question, is there a quota or performance incentive?
Yeah, like let's say you gave one DUI a year compared to a guy who gave 10,000. How would that be seen by your sergeant or whoever it is your boss?
Well, I can't answer for my sergeant. I believe the question was, is there a quota? No, there's not. They actually let us arrest as many people as we want to.
Okay. And some people arrest more?
Some people arrest more, some people arrest less.
Do you consider yourself someone who arrests more or less?
Objection. Relevancy.
Are you like
Sustained. Move on to the
Are
next
you a high
question.
performer?
Objection. Relevancy.
Sustained. Next
Do
question.
you give more arrests than the average officer
Objection.
for DUI?
Sustained.
Relevancy.
That is irrelevant. How can that not be relevant?
Coughlin.
Does he give more or less? What if he's given more DUI arrests than anybody
Hey,
in the
I'm going to
history
take
of
a
the
brief
California?
recess. Can you, we're going to take a brief recess at this point, and I will talk to you. You can step
step out.
outside. Yes.
Do you want to go off the record, Your Honor?
Yes.
Just a moment. Back on the record.
Okay, we're back on the record.
All right. Officer George, can you tell me in your report, Bates stamp page 8, it says he had an altered sense of time. This is on the Romberg. Altered sense of time estimating 30 seconds and 33 seconds. Can you tell me What would be not qualifying as an altered sense of time? Would that be 30 seconds and 30 seconds?
Yes.
So somebody who can close their eyes and without the aid of any mechanical device or watch or who can just count and know exactly how long a second is and hit it within, say, 1/10 of a second within 30 seconds? Is that what would be acceptable, or what would fail that? I mean, 33 seconds. Obviously, if you're off by 3, which means you're off.
Compound.
Just ask a question. Don't get into narratives.
Yeah. What would fail? So, I mean, strike that. We know 33 failed, right? 33 out of 30. So what is
No.
a passing score?
No.
32 out of 30?
No, again, I'm looking for a totality of the situation.
Well, we're not talking about that. We're talking about this one
Well,
part.
no,
Officer
actually,
George.
we
I
are.
don't want to hear about your totality.
Objection. Allow the witness to answer the question.
Allow the witness
I want a
to
yes
answer
or
the
no.
question.
I want a question
He can
that's
explain his yes or no
I want a question that's
answer.
tailored to this.
I understand that, but remember yesterday you were allowed to explain yes or no answers, so please. So what's your question now?
On this second test here, what is a passing?
Okay, I'm not sure, number one, which
In a number of seconds. As in, is 32 passing, something like that?
Okay, you're not referring to the second test, which would be the walk and turn test. You're referring to still the Romberg test?
Yes.
And you're asking me what would be passing?
Yes.
They're not pass or fail tests. I can't give you an answer for that.
Okay, what would not qualify as having an altered sense of time? Because that's the buzzword you're using in this particular. I know you use a lot of buzzwords. What'll work, what won't work, stuff
You
like
just
that.
ask a question, not
What
narrative?
would not be an altered sense of time? If 33 is 33 out of 30,
let's ask a question. What would not be an altered sense
not
of
be
time?
an altered
That's
sense of
the
time,
question.
Officer Gorge.
Well, again, what would not be an altered sense of time would be 30 seconds. However, that's not what this test is based on. It's not based solely on the seconds, which is what you seem to be hung up on.
Well, there's not much
What's
to
the
go
next
on.
question?
Well, I didn't understand his answer. Because, okay, obviously 30.00 is not altered, but in terms of
Mr. Coughlin.
in terms of looking at human beings, what would be something where someone would perform this test and you would not write, he had an altered sense of time? And I assume you'd write, his
Objection,
timing was
asked and
altered.
answered.
Let's ask a question, no narrative, okay? Otherwise, I'm not going to allow you to cross-examine anymore.
I have had cases where the person did not sway and had 30 seconds, and their time estimation was right on 30 seconds. I'm not, you know, it's a totality of the circumstances. Again, these are not pass-fail tests.
Great. Can you be more specific? Because anybody can say a totality of the circumstance.
Objection, Your Honor. Argumentative and
Sustained. Let's go to the next question.
If I had gotten 31 seconds, what would have that
objection,
gotten
relevancy.
charted as?
I'm going to overrule it. You want to ask the 31 seconds.
Okay, again, you would, based on the totality, if you swayed, it would say that you swayed and however
We're not
many
talking
inches.
about swayed, Officer
Please,
Gorge.
do not argue with the witness. His answer is his answer. Move on to the next question.
Do we even discuss seconds? Because we
Mr.
discussed
Coughlin,
swayed.
I'm going to not allow you to ask any more questions if you cannot act like a lawyer and ask a question, a proper question.
If I took 31 and a half seconds, can you just tell me what would wind up in your report?
Objection, relevancy.
I'm going to go ahead and let him ask that question, and that's the last question in this area.
Well, the report would say the number of seconds that you estimated 30 seconds in, be it 29, 28, 30, 31, 32.
Okay.
What's the next question?
But in
What's
this
the next
report, he
question?
put it in the context of a sentence that said he had an altered sense of timing, estimating, blah, blah. So you're not just putting numbers in there. You're putting an altered sense of timing. So what would 31 and a half get me?
It would get you 31 and a half seconds.
Would you say he had an altered sense of timing, estimating 31 and a half seconds and 33 seconds? Because that's what I'm asking.
Okay, again, I don't think you have an understanding of how the test works. Whether or not your time estimation is off, the test itself checks for divided attention impairment, which is standing with your head back and estimating 30 seconds. What I'm looking for is whether or not
I'm
you're...
not asking for your description of the
Let me
test in
explain
total.
the
He's going to describing the test in total, and that's not what I'm asking for.
I don't want any more questions in this area. You need to wrap up your cross-examination.
Have you ever received any commendations as an officer? Medals, commendations, awards?
Yes.
Can you describe those?
Well, let's see. I received a Master Award for shooting. I've been recognized by Mothers Against Drunk Drivers 5 times for my expertise in taking drug and alcohol-impaired drivers off the road.
That's Mothers Against Drunk Drivers?
Correct.
5 times. Is that like Officer of the Year?
No, it's actually not Officer of the Year. That would be separate, and I have not received Officer of the Year, if that's what you're asking me.
Okay, so what have you received from Mothers Against Drunk Drivers?
An award for my efforts in removing alcohol and drug-impaired drivers from the roadway.
5 times, awarded by MAD.
Correct.
For your work in DUI. So it kind of sounds like you're a superstar DUI cop.
Objection, argumentative.
Argumentative, and it's sustained.
So you've been recognized 5 times by MAD. Is that typical of officers? Or is that because you've had an exemplary record in giving out DUIs at a great rate?
Objection, compound.
Sustained.
Why, okay. Is that typical for an officer to get recognized by MAD 5 times?
I don't know if I can answer typical. There are several officers that have been recognized more, and there are several officers that have been recognized less.
So they don't just recognize 1 a year?
No. For example, this year there are 10 people from my station that are getting an award.
For this particular award or just any award?
This particular award.
This Mothers Against Drunk Driving award?
Correct.
And how many people are in your station that are eligible for the award?
Objection, relevancy.
Sustained.
Would you consider yourself to be someone who is a high-performing officer when it comes to giving out DUIs?
Objection, relevancy.
I'm going to overrule it.
Again, that's a matter of perception. No, I just work hard and do the job that they pay me to do.
So what's the next question?
And so, would you say they're giving out the 5 Mother Against Drunk Driving commendations just because you work hard and you're doing the job they pay you to do, or?
Objection, speculation.
Sustained.
Can you go on about any awards you might have received?
I've received, 5 awards for vehicle theft recovery, numerous written accommodations for anything from rescuing a guy that crashed over a cliff to...
How about we just talk about things related to DUIs? Awards related to DUIs in some whatever tenuous way.
We've already covered that.
Just the MAD, the 5.
Correct.
The 5 MAD recognitions. In your 16 years, wasn't there something about 11 years?
Objection
You've been an
is
officer for 16 years. Have you been something for 11 years?
I've been assigned to my current duty location for the last 11 years.
And that's as a northern.
I work for my current assignment is the North Sacramento CHP office.
Okay. Now, I noticed when you say I swayed, and this is on your report, basically on page 8, swayed in all directions approximately 2 inches from center. If someone who's 5 feet tall sways 2 inches, is that different from someone who's 6'4", swaying 2 inches?
No, 2 inches is still 2 inches.
Oh, is it?
Objection, argumentative.
Because I don't think it is.
Argumentative. Next
Okay.
question.
If someone is 5 feet tall and they sway 2 inches, is the percentage that they've swayed compared to their overall height higher
Objection,
than it
asked
would
and
be for
answered.
someone who's 6'4"?
Sustained.
And if the percentage is higher, doesn't that mean they're
Sustained.
swaying more so for their body height?
Sustained. What's the next question?
That's something you might learn in college.
What's the next question?
How do you differentiate between someone who's 7 feet tall swaying and someone who's 5 feet tall swaying?
Objection, relevancy.
Sustained. Next question.
What would be an acceptable distance for someone to sway? What would be someone who's clearly not intoxicated? How much would they sway?
Again, it's a totality of the circumstances.
Okay.
I mean, ideally, 0. It would stand at attention.
So we've got 30.00 seconds and swaying 0. It's kind of like very robotic, right?
Objection,
Is that how you would describe
argumentative.
yourself?
Sustained.
Well, okay, so in a circular way, you've told me what would be good is to do exactly what we're asking you to do, not
Objection.
sway at all. I haven't finished my
Argumentative.
question, Susan.
What's the question? What is the question?
What would be something other than perfect? What would be something that would be would fit in the range of this person is not getting arrested for a DUI and perfect? What's something?
I'm going to allow one more question in
Not
this
a
area.
swaying, I'm
Go
asking.
ahead. Ask the swaying question, and no more questions in the swaying area.
Okay.
Again, it's based on a totality. It's not based on just that test, which is why I give more than one.
But I'm sorry, Your Honor, he keeps doing that. He keeps going, it's totality,
But
it's not based. He doesn't answer my question.
He doesn't give you the answer you want, so let's move on to the next question.
Any answer he's ever given has been totality, totality.
And that's the way it is. What's the next
Because
question?
you can't say-
can't accept
you can't
it.
say-
Objection, Your Honor, I
Half
move to strike
because
the
your whole
rest of
thing
this
is just
cross-examination. This
baloney.
is a
Baloney.
waste of time.
I'm going to keep it on the record,
Okay.
okay? Move. What's the next question?
So we're not going to get any idea of how much one can sway.
I think I've heard ad nauseum
I've
swaying
heard totality of the
questions.
circumstances. I haven't heard anything about like half an inch, an inch. Can you move it all?
Because it's totality of the circumstances. What's the next question?
Can you describe what you mean by walking with floppy feet?
I can give you a brief description that may or may not make sense to you. Have you ever seen someone walk with flippers on, like they're going to walk out and go diving,
Yeah.
like that?
But if someone who doesn't have flippers on, they could still walk like that?
Sure.
Floppy
Next
feet.
question. What's the next question?
Is that kind of a personality type thing, you think? Walking with floppy feet?
Relevant.
I'm
Is
gonna
that
go
like
ahead
dressing
and
with
let
a
him
baseball
ask this-
cap or like wearing a gold chain or something? Is that like a personality thing?
Objection, relevancy.
I'm going to go ahead and let him ask this one more question.
Are you asking me if that's a personality trait?
Yeah.
I don't know you well enough to form that opinion, so I couldn't answer that.
Okay, but it made it in your police report under whether or not I had been drinking or driving, right?
Objection misstates what's in the police report.
Sustained.
Oh, well, I'm asking him. She asked me what was in reports over and over again yesterday.
I've sustained the
Okay.
objection. What's the next question?
So, but is floppy feet indicative of someone having been impaired?
Objection. Oh, strike that.
Go ahead.
It can be.
But it can also not be?
Again, it's based on the totality of the circumstances. It can be, and it could not be.
Okay.
That's not solely what I'm looking for.
Okay, well, let's speed this up. Boil this down to me. Boil me down what you are looking for. What's your top 5 hit list of why you think I was impaired? Let's give us your 5 best shots.
I can sum that up in one shot because
Not totality of the circumstances. Let's get some real things that
Can
you
you
have to
objection to
stand
allow the witness to
behind,
answer the
Officer
question?
Gorge. Okay?
Mr. Coughlin, please behave. The question is 5 indicators of why you felt he was under the influence of marijuana that night.
because based on my training and experience,
5 most important, I'm sorry. The
Okay,
5
will you please let him explain it?
Yes, Your Honor.
your physical indicators, the
Can
psychophysical
we
tests.
Okay.
have specific indicate, not broad,
Objection.
not
Allow the
index of a
witness to
book
answer
type
the
things to say.
question.
I don't want you to go to an index of
Mr.
a book and
Coughlin,
say this chapter, this
Mr.
chapter, this chapter.
Coughlin,
I want you to give me some
Pretty
words.
soon, I'm going to have you leave this courtroom if you don't behave. So, if you could give the court what made you think that he was under the influence of marijuana that night when you arrested him?
The physical indicators, which would be red and watery eyes, dilated pupils that were slow to react to light stimulus, green coating on the tongue, odor of freshly burned marijuana about your person and breath, your performance on the field sobriety tests.
That's 5.
That's what you asked for, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
The 5.
Okay, so what's the next
Okay,
question?
but I want to talk about these. Okay. I asked that question for a reason. The first one, I believe, was you said my physical characteristics,
Physical indicators.
red and watery eyes.
That
Can
was one
someone
of them.
have red or watery eyes? Say someone who works at a law firm as a litigation associate, first year, who's looking at a computer for 10 hours a day. Would that give you red or watery eyes?
Objection, relevancy.
I'm going to go ahead and let him go with that question. Go ahead.
It could. It can also be an indication of marijuana use.
Okay. But there's a lot. I mean, how many
What's the
allergies
next
can give you red or
question?
watery eyes?
What is the next question?
Okay. So, point 1 is something that could be a lot of things, right?
Okay, I'm not going to,
Point
I
2.
am not
But
going to
there's a good thing on point 2.
At this
Your
point,
Honor.
I am not going to continue.
One more question, please. Your Honor.
One more question.
Okay.
That's it.
Dilated eyes. Is taking back medication, would that dilate your eyes?
No.
It doesn't. Opiates don't dilate your eyes, and you're a drug recognition expert. Okay. I rest.
Allow the witness
Great.
to answer the question, Your Honor.
Please do. Please do. I'd love to hear this.
Actually, that's a narcotic, which would constrict your eyes.
Next question.
Right. So narcotics don't ever dilate your eyes.
Soma can dilate your eyes, but that's not what you were taking. You were taking Lortab.
Uh-huh.
So,
What's the next
And you
question?
say
case, no.
constrict, by that would make the pupil smaller?
Correct.
Okay. So point 1 was we had red watery eyes. Point 2 was we had
You don't need
dilated
to
eyes.
summarize the answer. You need to ask the next question.
Okay. Point 3 is my question.
What's the question?
Can you elucidate what point 3 was?
Refresh me.
I'm asking you.
He needs to be refreshed.
Well, it's his arrest, and they're his
Mr.
answers,
Coughlin,
right?
you're not asking a proper question at this point. I'm
Okay,
gonna
so
cut this short.
point 3, I'm going to say it was the floppy feet thing. I don't know.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to say it was a floppy feet thing, which could be kind of like a personality thing. Maybe one of these hip-hop
Objection
people
is
who walks
is
around with their floppy feet and their attitude and all
Counselor
that, right?
testifying?
What's the next question?
Are all 5 of these things you said, could they all be described by things other than intoxication? Could they be caused by things other than intoxication?
Well, I'm sure from sitting where you're sitting, yes.
But not from where you're sitting. Red eyes can't be caused by allergies.
Red eyes could be caused by number
Other
of
drugs can't dilate.
not
Objection,
letting you
allow
answer.
the witness
If
to
you're
answer the
being
question.
argumentative, let him explain his answer.
Red eyes can be caused by a lot of things. Again, based on everything that was presented to me, those are all indicators based on my training and experience that you had ingested marijuana recently and were under the influence.
So all 5 of these things.
Okay,
which
I'm
could
not
be-
allowing any more questions in this area. It's over with in terms of this. Okay? So, do you have any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Okay.
Is there a reason why we didn't call Officer Escatel at all?
No, we don't need an explanation. She can put on her case as she wishes. Okay, you may step down. Thank you.
I just want to check on my witnesses to see who I'm going to call next.
Yes.
Your Honor, can I ask, is there a transcript being made of this?
No, you're going to have to order a transcript.
Okay, but we are having every word.
You have a disc.
Okay. Thanks.
We'll just walk forward to the witness stand. Your Honor, the State Bar calls Mark Trados.
Okay.
Would you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly state under penalty of perjury that the evidence that you shall give in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please be seated and state and spell your first and last name for the record.
My name is Mark Tratos, Tratos.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Professor Trados?
You can call me Mark, that's fine.
Mark? Okay. Can you describe, are you employed?
I am.
Where are you employed?
I am the managing shareholder of the Las Vegas office of Greenberg Traurig. We're a large international law firm.
And how long have you been in that position?
A couple of years.
Where did you work before Greenberg Traurig?
I had my own firm, Cork and Tratos, which was an intellectual property and entertainment boutique.
And how long did you have that firm?
About 22 years.
Are you a licensed lawyer in California?
California and Nevada.
And where do you primarily practice?
Most of my time is spent in Nevada. I have had a lot of work in California over the years, but it's a small fraction of what I do in Nevada.
Do you have a specialty?
I do. I'm an intellectual property and entertainment lawyer with special emphasis on Internet law.
Have you ever taught any classes in Internet law?
Yes, I've been a regular adjunct faculty member for UNLV's Boyd School of Law, where I teach cyber law, rights of publicity, privacy, and defamation law, and entertainment law.
And how long have you been teaching those courses for UNLV?
I believe since the second year that UNLV was open, I began teaching there. I've also taught at Arizona State, and I'm on the boards of Lewis and Clark Law School in Portland and Southwestern in Los Angeles, and I am the vice chairman of the Board of Visitors for the National Judicial College.
You said that you had been teaching at UNLV Law School since the second year it opened?
I believe that's correct.
And do you have an approximate date for that?
Again, I think we're in our 7th year, so 6 years ago, something like that.
And at some point, did you teach a cyber law class at UNLV in the summer of 2001?
I did.
Was Mr. Zach Coughlin in your class?
I believe he was. He was one of my students.
And do you recall any contact that you had with Mr. Coughlin regarding that course?
Yes, he was a bright student in the classroom. We had a difficulty, I think, at the end of the class with a missing paper.
Okay. Well, I would like to discuss the missing paper. Can you explain to me what was the paper? Was it an assignment that you gave?
It was part of the class grade, accounted for 40% of the class grade, and it was part of the way that we got people to understand cyber law or internet law by actually having them research in an area and write a paper on an approved topic.
Were there, do you recall when the paper was due for that class?
It was at the end of the semester. I think it was turned in at the end of the semester. It was sometime in the July-August time frame.
Were there any requirements for turning in the paper?
Yeah, I required that each of the students turn in the paper both in a written, printed form, physical paper, and to submit it electronically as well.
Did you explain to the class why you needed an electronic form?
Not necessarily. It was a cyber law class, so expecting it to be turned in electronic form would seem to make sense, but it was also for my convenience so I could read it on my computer.
Now, did Mr. Coughlin, do you know whether or not Mr. Coughlin turned in that paper at the end of the semester?
Mr. Coughlin believed he did. I had no record of it, and we had a series of discussions about that fact that I had neither the paper copy nor the electronic copy, and I couldn't give him a grade until I had the copy so I could grade it.
Did you ever have Mr. Coughlin's paper in your possession that you know of?
Well, I subsequently, I think September, October, got a 6 or 7 page paper from him, which I don't think he represented as being his original paper. I think it was something that he was able to retrieve sometime later on. He indicated to me that he had a problem with his computer had crashed or something, and he was unable to retrieve the paper.
But did you ever have the final paper that he turned in, not the draft, in your possession?
Not that I'm aware of ever.
Okay. When did you realize that you didn't have that paper?
I think I realized that I didn't have it when I was grading the remainder of the papers. I had graded papers. It was not one of the papers in my paper pile, and therefore I gave them an incomplete, and I think that's how it came up.
Were there any other papers that you didn't receive from students in that class?
No, that was the only paper I didn't receive.
Professor Trados, I'd like you to turn to Exhibit 5 in the binder. Do you recognize Exhibit 5?
Well, I recognize my scribbles on the bottom of the page.
That's your handwriting
Yeah,
on
that's
Exhibit
my
5?
handwriting. Right.
What about page 1? Is this something you recognize as an email from Zachary Coughlin?
Let me read it briefly.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, I believe this is the email that Zach sent me after I had not been able to locate his paper.
I'd like you to turn to page 8. Dates on page 8 of the exhibit. Mm-hmm. Do you recognize page? Oh, sorry. Do you recognize page 8?
Page 8 of the exhibit just says, Zach, please send me another copy of your paper?
Yes.
Yes.
And how do you recognize this?
Because I remember doing that. I remember asking for another copy of the paper to be sent.
Is this the first contact that you had with Mr. Coughlin regarding the paper that you recall?
I don't know if it was the first, but it was very early on in it because he believed he had sent it, but we could not locate it, so we asked him to send us another copy of it.
Is there a reason that you use the word another copy in that email?
Well, sure. He indicated to us he had prepared it. We take our students' representations at face value. I had no reason to doubt it, so I assumed he had a copy and he'd get me another one.
Now, Professor, at some point, did you alert the law school dean about Mr. Coughlin's behavior in this regarding the paper?
I received,
Your Honor, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Legal objection.
Could I use the bathroom, the restroom?
Yes.
I'm
Okay.
sorry, Your Honor. I'm having some bladder problems.
Okay.
Okay.
I understand.
All right.
Why don't we take a 5-minute break?
Go back on the record.
Okay, resuming with the direct of Professor Tadas.
Professor, I believe my last question to you was, at some point, did you refer this matter with Mr. Coughlin to the dean at the law school?
after some weeks I did, yes.
And what was the basis for that referral?
I was concerned about the matter escalating. Mr. Coughlin had indicated he couldn't get the paper back to me because of some injury to his laptop. So I offered to pay for having his hard drive done. As an internet and computer firm, we had access to people who could do those kind of things, and so we offered to help him retrieve the paper if that would help. Somehow the communications got a little more agitated, and I thought it was something that probably I needed some guidance from the dean on as to how I should handle it. So I contacted the dean to try to get a handle on it.
When you just testified about things getting agitated, can you go into a little more detail about that?
Well, I understood that I had a student that was frustrated that he was not getting a grade because I was not giving him a grade, and I appreciated his concern about that. At the same time, I needed to have the paper so that I could grade it. Because he hadn't sent me an electronic version and I didn't have a paper version of the paper, I had asked him to send me another copy electronically so that I could at least examine it. When he was unable to produce that, then it made me concerned as to whether or not the paper had in fact existed. And as we went back and forth in an exchange of emails, I simply reminded him that in the class we had requested that he send both paper, or give paper and electronic, and that I hadn't received either. And even if he had turned in the paper one, I didn't have the electronic one, and therefore we needed it. Essentially, when the hard drive problem apparently materialized, there was a problem with his computer, so he couldn't give it. Put me in an awkward spot of not knowing what to do for him, and that's why I think he got frustrated, and I certainly was frustrated.
Can you turn to page 9 of the exhibit, please?
Okay.
Pages, do you recognize pages 9?
Oh, not page 9, okay.
Yeah, date stamp, page 9 through 15 of exhibit 5.
Okay. Page 9?
Yes.
Yes, I do.
And how do you recognize that?
In September, Zach sent me a email and attached a copy of a document which he thought was a very rough draft, expressed it as a very rough draft of the article that he said he had drafted or written, and that's what I see in this exhibit, and it is, I guess, page 9, page 10, 11, 12, 13, and going to page 15.
Did you use that draft that Mr. Coughlin provided to issue a grade for the paper in the class?
I did.
What was your impression of the draft that Mr. Coughlin turned in?
Assuming at face value it was the original early draft, rough draft, and not the final paper, it was a good initial draft.
Was there any language in the draft that you recall that you found to be out of place for a paper for law school?
Well, it had some colorful language in it. On page 14, let's get pissy over the meaning of revision, I thought was probably not the kind of scholarly.
Your Honor, relevancy.
I'm going to allow 1 or 2 questions in the area. So it's
Finish the
overruled.
question, the answer.
I assumed it was a misguided effort to be humorous.
I'd like you to turn to page 21, date stamp page 21 of the exhibit, Professor. Do you recognize this page?
I don't really recall this. This was apparently something that was actually sent to my assistant, Catherine Luce, at the time. I don't have as good a recollection of this one. I do recall he did send me something directly. And maybe it's the next page. I recognize the next page.
Was this something that either you or your assistant forwarded to the dean of the law school?
I think so, yeah.
And can you explain why this email was forwarded?
Zach's communication with me was very inconsistent. It tended to be extreme highs, extreme lows in terms of the level of emotional
Objection, Your Honor,
response.
relevancy.
Overruled.
He was very apologetic in some of these correspondence and not so in others.
How would you describe the content of the emails that Mr. Coughlin sent to you regarding this situation?
They were the most unusual
Objection, Your Honor,
communications.
relevancy.
Overruled.
They were the most unusual communications I received from any law student or any student at any institution that I taught at ever. They were just different.
Can you describe what you mean by that?
Zach's a very,
Objection, Your Honor, relevancy.
Overruled.
very articulate, but somewhat erratic and troubling. I mean, they were just the kind of communication that I don't think any professor would be comfortable in getting.
Did they cause you any concern?
Well, they only caused me concern that he was conducting himself in a fashion that I thought was of concern. Not that I was personally feeling bad or threatened or anything of that nature. It was just the conduct was unusual.
Now, you testified earlier that you referred this matter to the dean at the law school, correct?
I asked the dean how I should handle a missing paper, having never had the situation before. What would I do with this? How would I approach it? What should I do in terms of granting a grade or not granting a grade? Because as he expressed in his communication to me, I was holding up his graduation and his ability to become a lawyer. And obviously that's a very serious matter. It's something that would concern any faculty member to think that that was what was happening. And so I went to the people who essentially could give me directions on how I could best respond, which was the administration.
Are you aware that the administration opened up a academic dishonesty investigation against Mr. Coughlin related to the emails that or the class that he attended with you?
I'm aware that they had already had a file on Mr. Coughlin and they did
Objection,
something
Your
with it.
Honor, he's not answering the question. Relevancy.
Overruled.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the rest of your answer.
I was told that they had already begun a file on Mr. Coughlin on other matters, and they would add this to it.
Did you ever advise Mr. Coughlin why you were asking for another copy of, or a copy of his final draft?
Sure. Because in most instances that I've experienced in academic life, when we invest a great deal of time, energy, or effort on a paper, we keep a copy of it. We keep materials because it's something that might be useful to us later on. So it was standard practice to, even if a copy is damaged or somebody spills coffee on it or something, and you want to be able to read a nice legible one, it's not uncommon to ask for a second copy. In this instance, the course had required an electronic copy and a paper copy, so asking for an additional copy I thought was fairly customary, and I was somewhat surprised that he couldn't produce a second copy.
I have no further questions at this time.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
And remember to proceed by question.
Yes, Your Honor. Mark, can you tell me, how did you make this request for this digital copy to the class?
I believe it was both in the syllabus, class syllabus, and orally to the class.
Okay, because we do have a copy of the class syllabus, don't we?
I think so. I don't know.
Because I didn't see it in there.
Objection vague.
Let's proceed by question.
Okay.
Question.
Would it surprise you to know that it's not in the syllabus?
Wouldn't surprise me because I recall clearly standing in front of the classroom saying, let's make sure that you get me an electronic version as well so that I can take it with my computer if I go on vacation.
Okay, so when you were making the syllabus, did you know that you were going on vacation?
I don't know that I did or didn't.
So you maybe didn't put the thing about the digital
That's possible,
in the syllabus because you didn't know you were
That's
going on
possible.
vacation?
Yes.
Okay, but just earlier you said it was in the syllabus.
Objection.
Okay, I'm going to overrule the objection. Let him explain.
I believe it was likely to be in the syllabus. If it's not in the syllabus, I know I expressed it in class.
So what's the next question?
Okay. And so, since it's not in the syllabus, the only way somebody in the class would know that you wanted this digital copy is that you expressed it in class. Can you tell us?
Objection, speculation.
I'm going to go ahead and overrule the objection. Go ahead.
Can you tell us how? I mean, did you make this announcement at the beginning, end of the class? Was it?
Zach, my policy typically is, as we're getting ready to get papers turned in, I'm mentioning it several times during each of the class sessions to remind people because it's a fine deadline and I have a limited amount of time to grade, and so it comes up, a couple times a week in class. So that we
what
can,
is it?
reminders about the paper come up several times.
I asked you about the digital copy, and when you announced that digital copy is a requirement for this course. When did you ask that? When did you say that?
Why don't I overrule the objection and go ahead and let you answer it?
As I recall, Zach, it would have been several times during the semester, and as the paper came to the time it was due, I would have said it repeatedly in the classroom.
Said what?
Said, remember your papers are due, remember I need both a hard copy and a digital copy.
That's what I'm just on the hard copy. I don't need to know when you're saying the papers are due. Okay, you said several times throughout the semester you would have said, class, I need a digital copy and a hard copy of this paper. You would say that. Okay, at what point in this semester, so several times throughout the semester, at what point did you schedule your vacation, which would have necessitated this hard copy? Was this
Objection,
earlier on in
relevancy.
the
I'm going to
semester?
go ahead and let him ask this question because
Zach, the
Yes, Mark.
norm was to have had the paper copy, not the digital copy. What was unusual here was I was asking also for the digital copy.
So it was unusual, okay.
I was asking for
At
both.
what point in the semester did you decide you were going on vacation and thus...
I don't recall.
Because that was the whole point, right, as you said, in asking for a digital copy, right?
That's one of the reasons that
You
they
couldn't
read
have
it.
announced it to the class prior to knowing you were going to go on vacation. You wouldn't have said, I
Wait,
might.
well, let's ask question, no narrative.
So at what point did you decide you were going on vacation?
Zach, I don't
Objection asked and answered.
recall when I
I'm
decided
going
I
to
was
go
on
ahead and
vacation.
let him answer. Okay, what's the next
You
question?
don't recall when you were going to go on vacation.
I don't recall when I decided I was going on vacation.
You
That was
recall
the
where
question.
you were going to vacation?
Yes, I was going to California, San Diego.
To California. And did you bring a laptop with students' papers loaded onto it for grading?
I did.
You did. So it was at some point in the semester that you knew, okay, I'm going to go to, and how long did you go to California for?
I think I was there for 4 or 5 days.
And this would have been around when?
Sometime in September, October of 2001.
Okay, so class ended July, and you're going to bring your, and grades are due on September 5th, right? That means the grades
That's
are,
not in evidence.
Okay, here's...
that can be judicially
okay.
noticed, Your Honor.
No, it's not going to be judicially noticed.
If there's a long-standing rule that grades are needing to be due 45
It's
days
judicial
after the
notice
class
is
ends.
completely different.
All right.
Okay?
I didn't go
I mean,
to a
here's-
top-tier law school. I went to UNLV.
Okay.
So,
100 Law School.
Okay, Mr. Coughlin, here's the problem. The State Bar is asserting that you misrepresented the outcome of the academic dishonesty investigation and the evidence supporting that position. At this point, it's not really relevant in terms of, where he spent his vacation and what he spent his vacation. It's whether you misrepresented the outcome.
Right.
So I would suggest that you focus on the outcome.
okay. I'm just trying to understand, Your Honor, why Mr. Trados would be loading papers on to
But that's not the issue
grade,
here.
To grade 5 days after grades were supposed to be
That's
turned
not
in.
the issue, so it's relevant.
It goes to whether he even knows where anything is, or if he's 45
But that-
days late to grade something.
But that is not the issue in this case. It's what you represented to the California State Bar regarding the outcome of all this.
Right, and a central issue in this is whether he announced to the class that digital copies due.
It's
Somehow
not-
we made that a central issue.
Okay,
like that's
this
a
is
big
not the
deal.
issue,
Yeah.
okay?
Okay. So at some point in the semester, you decided, this is the semester that ended July 15th.
The point is, okay,
I'm asking, I will ask the question.
what's the question?
At some point in the semester that ended July 15th, this has got to be a couple months beforehand, right? You said, you know what? Sometime September, October, I'm going to go to San Diego, so I need to load these papers onto my... So I'm going to announce this to the class sometime in like July, that you might go on a trip in September.
What's the next question?
Objection relevancy.
I'm asking you if that's what happened.
No, it's not, Zach.
Okay, please explain to me, Mark.
The class is going on. As the papers get nearer, I remind the class several times that the papers are due. That's going to be 40% of the grades. I want them in both paper form and in digital form. The interesting thing here is the paper form was never turned in, and that's the point we were trying to make.
Question, Your Honor. Paper form was turned in.
What's the next question?
No, I'm sorry. I didn't. Go ahead. Finish answering the question.
Object to someone's answer.
Well, okay. I'll ask the question again.
No, I don't
Ask
want to
an
hear
answer.
the
But
question
he didn't
again.
answer it.
He was explaining his answer. I think you really don't understand what the point of this hearing is, and I think you're not getting it. The point is that it is alleged that you misrepresented in the application that it was completely resolved in your favor. You need to focus on that issue as opposed to attacking Professor Trottis. It's not helping your case.
Okay. Okay.
It's clear there was some misunderstanding.
Okay. Point taken, Your Honor. Mark, did you have a student in the class who worked for you?
I probably did.
You don't remember a gentleman named Don. He was a summer associate for you. He was in the
Don
sidewalk.
Prunty is still working for me.
He's still with you. And was he in that class?
I believe he
Objection
was.
relevancy.
And he got
I'm
an
going to
A
go
in
ahead
that.
and let him explore it for...
He got an A in that class, didn't he?
He was one of several people who did.
There was only a couple people that got an A, right?
I believe there were several.
How many is several?
Objection relevancy.
Sustain.
His employee was one of a couple people who got an A in this class. Okay.
Remember, the issue is your misrepresentation about the outcome.
Right. Well, but this goes to why my name wasn't on the paper, Your Honor.
It
why
doesn't
I
matter
put my
why
Social
your name...
Security number on the
Okay.
paper, because he's got one, that's what we did in every class. It was blind grading. And two, if
Mr.
we got an employee
Coughlin,
in
but
the
this
class.
is totally irrelevant.
No, it goes to whether or not this paper was turned in, Your Honor, and that is relevant.
It doesn't make any difference whether the paper was turned in.
It doesn't?
Not in terms of this hearing.
What does? So it doesn't matter whether, let's say I did turn this paper in. Let's just go ahead and assume that. That doesn't matter. That doesn't, is that what you're saying?
Outcome of the academic dishonesty investigation and what you reported as the outcome.
Okay, so whether or not I did this is irrelevant, right?
Mr. Coughlin, what's your next question?
Because I'm just confused, because we say, well, if it's the outcome that matters, then why did we go into the arrest? You know, because we could have just looked at the outcome and we would say, okay, we got a dry reckless, you reported it, boom, we're done. But instead, we spent 4 hours on the arrest.
You reported...
Now, if the outcome is the only thing that matters, why are we looking at the...
You reported that the investigation was resolved completely in your favor. That's the alleged misrepresentation. So...
Objection, Your Honor. I don't know where... Okay, never mind.
Let's ask the next question.
Okay. Mark, did I get a passing score in this class?
I believe you got a D in the class.
Okay. Is that a passing score?
I believe it's a passing score.
Okay. Do you know whether or not I had ever received another D from any
Objection,
professor?
relevancy.
Sustained.
Okay.
Oh, no.
So I passed the course. Do you usually pass people who have committed academic dishonesty?
Objection, relevancy.
Sustained.
Would you pass someone who's committed academic dishonesty?
Objection,
I was
relevancy.
aware of it, no.
If you were aware of it, no, you wouldn't. Okay. Why did you pass me in this course?
I'm not the person who sits and judge.
You don't give the grade, the pass-fail grade?
Please let
correct.
him explain.
Okay, because that's a new one to me. I
Okay,
thought
the
the
question
professor did
is
good.
why did he pass you? If you would
Yeah.
allow him to answer the question.
Yes, Your Honor.
Zach, I took at
Yes, Mark.
face value your representations that
And I have some questions about
Okay,
that.
please
Go ahead.
don't interrupt.
I took at face value your representations that even though you'd written your paper on a computer, and even though your computer was still available to you, and even though I had offered to pay to have the paper retrieved from your
The
computer,
one file, not the whole...
Please do not interrupt,
Oh, I'm sorry, Your
okay?
Honor. Go ahead.
you were unwilling to do that for some reason. I took that at face value, had nothing to do with the fact that the computer itself might not have contained it. I took at face value your submitting materials to me, and I graded the materials you submitted to me. I thought it was highly unlikely to be...
I'm sorry, your objection, Your Honor, relevancy. The question was, why did you pass me, right? So I don't...
Yes, and he's given an explanation. Please continue
rambling.
with your explanation.
I took your representations to me at face value. I gave you a grade in the class. I doubted sincerely your explanation, but I did not sit as a judge.
Is that your answer?
I think that's my answer.
For why you passed me in this course? I did not sit as a judge. That's your answer.
That's my answer. You had a...
Is that all one needs to do, is not have you sit as a judge to pass your course?
Okay, I'm going to...
Objection,
It's argumentative. I'm going to sustain it. Let's move on
So-
to the next question.
You passed me, so I passed the course, right? Could I, if I would have been guilty of academic dishonesty, could have I passed the course?
Objection, asked and answered.
I wasn't involved in evaluating whether you were engaged in academic dishonesty. I turned that matter over to the law school.
Okay. But you passed me, right? So if the law school, somebody at some point, they wouldn't have passed me if I was guilty, right?
Objection, speculation.
Can I ask that to Professor Trados? I mean, he's been a professor for
I'm
many
going to go
years.
ahead and let you ask that question. One more question in this area.
Is there a question?
So I can't ask that question?
Go ahead and ask the question. Although the fact of it is that you...
All right, there's more interesting stuff to get to here. Whether Mr. Trados can tell me why I passed or not, we'll move on from. Mark, did you feel threatened by me during this?
Threatened by you?
Yeah, threatened.
Threatened. Physically? No.
You didn't feel physically threatened?
No.
Okay. Did you feel threatened in any way?
Certainly.
How so?
You have a line in one of the emails, early emails that you sent to me, which suggested to me that you were going.
Okay, let him finish. You asked it.
Yes, Your Honor.
You're getting far afield, but it's not helping your case.
Okay, I promise this is going somewhere.
Okay.
Which you were suggesting that we were going to have to go through an entire chain of custody investigation on the physical papers.
Similar to what we're doing right now?
I don't know.
Okay. So that made you feel threatened?
Certainly.
Why? Did you have something to hide?
Objection argumentative.
Sustained.
For the same reason. Go ahead.
Sustained.
Okay.
What's the next question?
Mark, I noticed earlier today you said, I was doing this because I was concerned, not because I was threatened. You said that earlier today.
Objection
I wasn't
argumentative.
threatened.
What's the question?
My question is, why earlier today on the stand did you say you weren't threatened, and then now you're saying you're threatened? And then in
Objection,
another
misstatement
email here,
testimony.
you have, I just got your threatening email.
I don't think I ever said I just got your
Well,
threatening
let
email.
me go back to your email where you say, I got your threatening email,
No,
Mr. Kaufman.
read it carefully, sir. Use the
I'll try with my UNLV education. I'll try to read it carefully.
Mr. Kaufman, you are only making your case worse.
Your exhibit is number 5. Bait stamp page 7 from Mark Trados. I just received your somewhat threatening email and was surprised by its tone and content.
What's the question?
How does that relate to your statement earlier today that I wasn't threatened?
Okay, let him
Objection,
ask that
misstates the
question one more
testimony.
time. Let's put it on the record.
Again.
Do you remember saying that earlier today?
Will you let him answer the
about not being
question?
threatened today? I'm just trying to clarify. We know what we're talking about.
Zach, yes, and I've made a distinction between being physically threatened and being threatened. And there's two different states. One is fear or apprehension of physical harm, and one is someone is accusing you of some kind of misconduct. Different animals altogether.
So when you accuse someone of some kind of misconduct, are they supposed to feel threatened?
Objection speculation.
Sustained. What's the next
Well,
question?
you're describing what makes you feel threatened is when someone accuses you of some kind of misconduct, right?
That is one of the things that can make someone feel
And
threatened.
you accused me of some kind of misconduct, right?
Objection misstates
And
the
yet
testimony.
you're the one who's feeling threatened.
Oh, sustained.
Is there a double standard there, Mark?
Let's ask. It's sustained. Let's ask another
The
question.
rules don't really apply to you, right?
Objection
You
argumentative.
don't need to treat other people as you'd
Sustained.
want to be treated
Sustained.
because you're Mark Trados, right?
Zach, I've always tried to treat you courteously.
Right. Can you tell me, what's the first time you communicated to me, I need another copy of your paper? Or that you had lost my paper?
Objection misstates the testimony.
Or that you had thrown my paper away?
Okay,
Or
why
whatever
don't
you did?
I'm going to go ahead and let you ask the question. Can you tell him the first time, if you can recall?
I believe I had completed grading everybody's papers, had come to the conclusion that yours was not in the group, and wrote you an email asking for another copy of your paper.
Would it be this email, page 8, Exhibit 5, where you say, Zach, please send me another copy of your paper? This is the first correspondence after class that ended between yourself and me, right?
I believe that may be it.
Okay. So send me another. But earlier you had said, when Susan said, why did you say send me another copy of your paper? You said, well, I had not sat and judged. I had
Objection
taken.
mischaracterizes the
Okay,
testimony.
I'm
No,
going
no,
to
I-
sustain the objection.
I have somewhere good to go with this.
No.
But
I'm going to sustain
earlier
the
he
objection.
said I took him at value. If I haven't
Coughlin,
even represented to you up to this point why that I gave it to you,
Okay,
then why would you say another? Because I had never said I gave
I'm
you
going to
anything
take a
up to this
recess
point.
at this point, okay? And I need to talk to the applicant. Can we take a 5-minute break?
Certainly.
Okay. If you could step down.
Thank you.
What would you suggest, Judge? Do you have a recommendation?
No, it's totally up to you. But when I'm
Back on the record.
we're back on the record, and the court has taken a 5-minute break to talk to the applicant regarding issues of how to conduct himself in court. When I sustain an objection, that means that you cannot ask the question again the next time, number one. Number two, the issue in this case is not whether, in fact, there was a paper that existed or that the professor had the paper, and that's not the issue. The issue is your representation to the State Bar about what was the outcome of that investigation. You are not helping yourself to argue with this professor about the actual paper. The State Bar has alleged that you said it was completely resolved in your favor. There's some information that they're saying it wasn't resolved, that there was a formal letter of warning. That's really the issue, not all this other
Okay.
arguments that you're getting into.
If
You would do best to let him go, frankly. It has nothing to really do with this.
Okay. If part of this investigation is whether or not this guy was threatened.
It's not. That was never an issue. You opened it up.
In the investigation? About whether or not I received a letter of warning about what was I warned about?
You were warned about your behavior.
Specifically? Not, was it about turning a paper in, or was it about threatening somebody, or what was it about?
You had characterized what you had received as resolved completely in your favor. The State Bar presents something that says it was a formal warning letter.
I said it was resolved, but there was this thing where I had to pay $100, right?
This is completely unrelated.
They're in the same letter. The same exhibit deals with both incidences. The exhibit where she's saying...
All I'm trying to tell you is that it is not helpful for you to go into the details of whether there was a paper or not, how he regarded it.
There's just a couple more questions, and I know I get where you're going. This stuff is not what's at issue, okay? So I'm not going to take a lot more time. Little more time with Mr. Trottis.
Okay. So let's have Mr. Trottis come back in
But,
and conduct
Your Honor,
yourself
for the sake of this
properly.
trial, if we could just take a second. If that is the issue, how I characterize this investigation, and their whole evidence consists of this one piece of paper where the guy says this is a informal letter of warning, or he says it's a formal letter of warning and an informal letter where it's, okay, so then we really need to focus on that stuff, right? Because that's confusing, right?
And that has nothing to do with Professor Trottis.
But who are they saying I threatened if it wasn't Mr. Trottos? That's what I don't... If we could just look at exhibit, whatever it is that's his formal letter...
What exhibit is it?
I want to say off the top of my head it's 57,
Yeah.
but I'm not
It
entirely
might be
sure.
53. 53 or 57. I think it's 53.
Yep, 53.
53, I apologize.
Okay. If you are found responsible for similar violations of the student code, your status as a UNLV will be reconsidered.
And I don't see anything about the academic dishonesty here. How am I supposed to know what's what? Because here they're talking about assaulting, striking, threatening. I thought this was about an email and a paper.
Mr. Coughlin is not under
Arguing your
oath right now.
case. Right. You are arguing your case. That is, the point is...
I'm trying to help this case find out where it needs to go. Okay.
No, you're not helping it. You're widening it.
I won't argue my case, but if this paper is, if the nexus is as you say, if the key inquiry is as you say, how I reported the resolution of this academic dishonesty investigation, and this is their star witness in that, and what they're coming, the other thing they're coming with is my statements in my application which say, okay, yeah, I had to pay $100 for moving this computer, and then my...
What you have done is made it much broader than it ever was. Their argument is that you misrepresented. They showed Exhibit 53. That's it.
Okay, well, if you can explain to me what Exhibit 53 is talking about, maybe I could understand. But I don't know if they're talking about Mark Trados. I don't know who they're talking about threatening. I don't know if they're talking about a paper thing or what, you know?
All I'm saying is
if you can tell me, if I'm acting stupid on purpose, tell me.
I'm not saying you're acting stupid.
If you can read this and tell me that, great. But I can't understand what they're saying. You know, because I don't think they really know what they're saying. I don't think they have
Your Honor,
to.
Mr. Coughlin is not under oath right now. He is basically making a closing argument.
I'm counsel.
Okay, so why don't we?
I'm not a witness, right? I'm opposing counsel, and we're talking about this case.
Okay, so why don't we call Professor Trados back in and proceed with cross-examination? I've told you what the issues are, and you need to confine yourself to the issues and not widen this case.
Yes, Your Honor.
Because as I see it, that's exactly what you're doing. Okay. Resuming with the cross-examination of Professor Trados.
Mark, have you ever lost another student's paper?
No, Zach, I haven't.
Objection.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead. It stands. He says he hasn't. What's the next question?
Would it surprise you that some of your former associates have told me that you had lost other people's papers in the past?
It would surprise me.
It would surprise you.
Okay, what's the next question? No editorializing.
So you're saying there's never been an incident while you're teaching either at the law school or as a professor at UNLV's undergrad or some other grad program where someone's paper or someone's take-home test or whatever came up missing. Think hard,
asked
Mark.
and answered.
Think hard because I want you to know.
I'm going to go ahead and let him ask it one more time.
And be sure that nobody who used to work for you knows about this. Okay?
No editorializing.
Make sure that never happened because you don't want to commit perjury.
Objection. Argumentative.
The question is, has it happened before?
Zach, I don't recall any paper having turned up missing. I do recall that someone's take-home exam at some point at an undergraduate level didn't arrive.
Didn't arrive.
Right.
And did the student say, no, I did turn that in?
Objection. Relevancy.
Sustained.
This has happened before. And okay, so that happened before. And then
Objection. Misstates the testimony.
Okay, wait. What happened before?
One of his former associates has told me that he has lost other
Objection,
people's
hearsay.
papers before.
That's hearsay, and it's editorializing. What's
He
the
just
question?
admitted to losing a take-home test.
Objection.
He did not, sir.
Mischaracterizes the testimony.
Okay,
That's what you do, right?
okay. What's the question?
So someone's take-home test turned up missing before.
I have a recollection that someone did not have a take-home test turned in. Not at law school, at an undergraduate class, and I believe it was more than a decade ago.
Did they just die? Or
Objection.
or how did-
Relevancy.
I mean-
Sustained. No more questions in this area. Move on.
Okay. Can you tell me who Jessica Wolf is?
I can't.
Okay. Because in your initial...
he said he can't, so
Right.
what's the next
This
question?
is my next question. In your initial email to UNLV requesting my email address to talk about this missing paper, you also asked for Mrs. Wolf's email address to talk about her missing paper.
Objection. Can counselor point to what he is referencing?
It was in the materials you showed me, and it was in the materials I had.
what are you
cleverly
referencing?
admitted it from what you're showing the court, but you saw it too.
Mr. Coughlin, ask the next question.
Do you recall not having Jessica Wolf's paper for this very same class?
Objection.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and let him ask
question.
this question. Go ahead. Ask it.
I don't.
Okay, so what's the next question? He doesn't recall.
Okay. I'd like to take judicial notice that within the file for UNLV on this matter, there is a paper that says, please give me Jessica Wolf and Zach
I don't take
Coughlin.
judicial notice. That isn't what judicial notice is,
Well,
okay?
Okay. At some point, I can present that to you if you'd like to see it.
Mr.
Okay. And you too, Mark.
Coughlin, you
if-
need to
if
present
jog
your
your
own case.
recollection a little.
What's the next question?
So, Mark, were you involved at all in this investigation? Because it...
Okay, just ask,
Okay.
were you involved
Were you
in the
involved in it?
investigation?
No, I wasn't.
Okay,
How
what's
can
the
you
next
investigate?
question?
How can you tell me? Does that bother you not to be involved in an investigation when you brought it?
I didn't bring it. I turned over my electronic communications that I'd received from you. That was
I
what
wasn't
did.
bringing it, right?
Objection, Your Honor.
Okay,
Argumentative.
what's the next question?
But they never asked you. Well, I mean, in order to investigate an academic fraud investigation, that's in conjunction at least with your class. Wouldn't they need to communicate with you a little bit to do a thorough investigation?
Objection, speculation.
Sustain. What's the next
But
question?
they didn't communicate with you at all, right?
Not correct.
I don't understand. Did they communicate with you about this investigation or not?
They asked me to give them all of the materials in my files.
Okay.
Next question.
And did you discuss any other communications we had?
What other communications we had?
I don't know. Did we have other communications, or were they all in these emails?
I believe the only communications that we had were, in fact, either in the emails or subsequently you called me telephonically.
When was that?
You called me some months, many months later, told me you went through a 12-step program and apologized for your conduct.
That was many months. Was it years later?
May have been years later.
Was it? Okay.
So what's the next question?
So that call really didn't have much to do with, like, you couldn't have turned that over to them. And I object to your characterization of that call because it's
Okay,
inaccurate.
next